All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to break down the investment pitch for one of Delhi's most hyped-up new commercial projects, Omaxe State Dwarka. We'll be digging into the arguments that Onkar Real Estate Solutions is making to see what this pitch is really all about.
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the big claim they're making. Then, we'll get into the all-important idea of footfall, see what the project's actually made of, crunch the numbers, and wrap up with this pretty interesting investment philosophy they're pushing.
So, the pitch starts with a bang. I mean, that is an incredibly bold statement. They're not just saying it's a good deal in Delhi. They're claiming it's the #1 commercial opportunity in the entire country. A claim like that is designed to make you sit up and listen. So let's unpack the logic behind it.
So, what's the big idea here? Why is this being sold as this massive, can't-miss opportunity? Well, it all boils down to challenging the way most of us even think about commercial property in the first place. The whole pitch is basically saying, hey, stop obsessing over the immediate rental income. Instead, they want investors to focus on what they believe is the one thing that truly matters for long-term success, the sheer number of people walking through the doors.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. How exactly do they plan on guaranteeing all these people? See, it's not just about building a mall. It's about creating an entire ecosystem, a magnet that's designed to constantly pull in huge crowds.
The entire investment case, the whole shebang, it hangs on this one word, footfall. The argument is dead simple. If you can guarantee a massive, non-stop flow of people, the shops inside are practically guaranteed to succeed. Everything else is just details.
And here's the game plan. They aren't just selling you a shop. They're selling you a piece of a huge sports and entertainment district. You've got an international stadium, an indoor arena for concerts, a 5-star hotel, a giant convention center next door. The whole strategy is to create so many reasons for people to come here that the mall becomes the default, unavoidable place to be.
And the scale of this thing is a huge part of the pitch. We're talking 55 acres. In a city like Delhi, that is absolutely massive, and it signals that this is meant to be a true landmark project. It doesn't stop there either. The project is also leveraging what's around it. Literally right across the way is a 200-acre park, which is a big tourist draw all by itself. So the idea is to create this perfect synergy where one attraction feeds people directly into the other.
Okay, so we've talked about the grand vision. Now, let's zoom in a bit and look at the actual property, the tangible thing that investors are being asked to buy into.
So inside that 55-acre area, this breakdown is pretty telling. Almost 2/3 of the land is dedicated to the sports city. That's the big magnet for people. The mall itself sits on the other 20 acres, perfectly positioned to catch all that traffic. They also make a big deal about who's behind this project. It's a partnership between a big-name developer, Omaxe, and the government's own Delhi Development Authority, the DDA. That partnership is presented as a kind of stamp of approval, a mark of security for an investment that kicks off at around 52 lakhs. All right, let's get to the part everyone's really waiting for, the money. Let's talk numbers. How do they justify the price, and what kind of returns are they promising?
So the pitch does something really smart here. It knows you're probably thinking, okay, this sounds expensive. So it tackles that objection head-on by framing the price not as high, but as a great value compared to what's already out there. And here is the absolute core of their value argument. They tell you to look at the nearby Vegas Mall. They say it sells for about 3 lakh rupees a square foot, with rents around 1,300. But Omaxe State Dwarka, they're offering it for half that purchase price. And they're projecting that because of all that footfall we talked about, it will eventually command an even higher rent of 1,500.
And to sweeten the pot for early birds, they're throwing in a lease guarantee that promises a 7% return. They're quick to point out that this is a way better deal than what you typically get from an existing property, which is usually more like 4 or 5%.
Now, there's one technical detail they address, which is that the land is on a 99-year lease. Now, if that sounds like a red flag, the pitch frames it as a total non-issue. They basically say, look, this is standard for Delhi, it's as good as owning it outright, and they even suggest it'll probably become fully freehold down the road anyway. Okay, let's move to the final piece of the puzzle. This is where the pitch really zooms out, from just talking about a property to promoting a whole philosophy on how to build wealth, and they've branded it Live Insurance.
So what on earth is life insurance? Well, here's the big idea. They argue that regular life insurance only pays out after you're gone. This life insurance, on the other hand, is designed to support you while you're alive by giving you a steady income that can act as your financial backbone.
And this really gets to the heart of the distinction they're making. One is a safety net for your family's future. The other is pitched as a financial engine for your security and your wealth building, right here and now.
And they don't just leave it as a vague concept. They lay out a very concrete game plan for how this all works. The idea is pretty cool. You use the rent from your commercial property to pay the mortgage on your house. Then, after a few years, that house can pay for itself with its own rent, which frees up your commercial income so you can go and do it all over again with another property.
And this old saying just wraps up their entire philosophy perfectly. The argument is that the income-producing asset, the shop, has to be the foundation. It has the power to fund everything else, like your home. But it just doesn't work the other way around.
And that leaves us with a big, provocative question at the center of this entire pitch. It really challenges the way we're often taught to do things, buy a house first. It asks you to stop and consider if the real key to building wealth is to first own the shop that can pay for everything else. It's a powerful idea to think about. That's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in.